Imagine one day you see a child aggressively snatching another child's favorite toy, then stomping down the sandcastle that little one spent the whole afternoon carefully building. What would you think? Just childish mischief, right? But if the one doing the taking isn't a child at all, if it is a powerful adult, and the sandcastle isn't sand, but the very soul of someone chosen by God, someone he has laid his hand upon, anointed, and called by name, then the game suddenly becomes a horrifying act of desecration against the Creator himself. The narcissist, blinded by arrogant pride, believes they can trample the small ones without consequence. They do not know that every time they wound a member of Christ's body, they are swinging their fist at the very face of God. And God, like Aslan in the old tale, is no tame lion. He is patient, but never passive. He is gentle, but never domesticated. And when his roar tears through the heavens, creation trembles in loyalty to the one who defends his people. This is the part the narcissist never sees coming. They mistake your kindness for weakness, your mercy for naivety, your silence for surrender. They cannot fathom that some walk quietly because the glory upon them is not of this world. Touching your life is touching the apple of God's eye. The ground beneath your feet is not neutral, it is holy, sealed by covenant, guarded by a God who does not sleep. There is a spiritual boundary they cross, without fear because they misread gentleness as lack of covering. But heaven knows who belongs to the Lord, who carries his mark, who his angels surround, and when a line has been crossed. They call cruelty necessary, betrayal, self-care, manipulation, strategy. Heaven calls it an assault against an anointed one, and no such assault goes without divine response. The Lord does not defend you because you are perfect, but because you are His. His fingerprints are on your story, His purpose fills your breath, His eye sees the destiny in your steps. So while the narcissist celebrates getting away with it, something ancient stirs in the courts of heaven. The scales shift, witnesses gather, the lion lifts his head. A holy verdict begins forming, unchangeable, unstoppable. They thought they crushed your sandcastle. They provoked the architect. They thought they diminished your worth. They awakened your defender. They thought they hurt you in secret. Heaven watched openly. When the roar of God's justice rises, nothing stays as it was. What broke is rebuilt. What was stolen is restored. What hid in darkness is exposed. And the one who believed they held power finds the ground collapsing beneath them. No narcissist survives the karma heaven releases against those who harm God's own. Divine observation, God watches longer than man thinks. There is a kind of silence in heaven that unnerves the righteous and emboldens the wicked. It is the silence of God watching, not absent, not indifferent, but deliberate. It is the silence that fools the narcissist into believing they have outsmarted the Almighty. They interpret your patience as weakness, and God's patience as permission. Yet every single act they commit, every lie they craft, every wound they inflict, is weighed on scales far older than the earth itself. Long before you realized what was happening, heaven had already taken note. God saw the moment their charm was a snare. He saw the instant their affection shifted into entitlement. He saw how they learned to twist words until your confidence cracked. He saw how they used your compassion as leverage, how they carved pieces out of your soul while convincing you that you were the unstable one. And while the narcissist performed one facade after another, heaven's gaze never wavered. If this truth speaks to something deep inside you, type 77 in the comments, so others can recognize they're hearing what their spirit has long known. Divine observation is not passive, it is investigative. God sits as the judge, not the spectator. His silence is the gathering of evidence, the assembling of witnesses, the examining of motives. The narcissist thinks their darkness is hidden because no one confronts them, but darkness is only hidden from human eyes, not from divine sight. What they whisper in shadows is recorded in light. What they build on deceit is already collapsing in the courts of eternity. There were nights you wondered, "Lord, do you see this? Do you see what they're doing to me?" He did. He does. And he kept watching, not because he was ignoring your pain, but because he was measuring theirs. God allows the narcissist to reach the full measure of their pride before he initiates judgment. If he responded too soon, they would call it unfair. If he waited too long, you might lose heart. So he responds at the precise moment when their own actions condemn them more thoroughly than any accusation ever could. Heaven watches the way a surgeon studies a wound before making an incision carefully, intentionally, with absolute clarity of purpose. The narcissist believes their manipulations are clever, but to God they are transparent threads of smoke. They imagine their lies are airtight, but to God they are glass. They think their cruelty will fade into memory, but heaven preserves every tear as testimony. And while they congratulate themselves for their control, heaven is quietly building a case against them. Angels record what you endured not to shame you, but to vindicate you. The Spirit of God collects your sighs as evidence. The Father himself marks the threshold where injustice will no longer be tolerated. This is the mystery. Before God moves, he watches. Before he confronts, he measures. Before he judges, he reveals. The narcissist sees the delay as freedom. God sees it as the perfect staging for their exposure. Divine observation is heaven's way of ensuring that when justice arrives, it will not be questioned, reversed, or softened. It will be complete. It will be righteous. It will be final. The breaking point where heaven rises and declares, "Enough." There is a threshold in the spiritual realm that even the long-suffering patience of God will not allow to be crossed. The narcissist does not recognize this boundary because they cannot comprehend a universe where they are not the center. They believe their charm can soften judgment, their excuses can deceive justice, and their shifting narratives can confuse even the Almighty. But God is not moved by theatrics. He is moved by truth. And when the truth becomes so distorted, so violently manipulated, so arrogantly abused, that it threatens the very soul he has anointed, heaven stands to its feet. The breaking point is never loud at first. It begins in the stillness, an unseen shift, a tightening of spiritual pressure, a rearranging of divine order. The narcissist feels something changing, though they cannot name it. Their confidence begins to sputter. Their control starts slipping through their fingers. Their once dependable manipulations suddenly fail to produce the same results. People who once believed them begin to hesitate. Their charm grows brittle. Their lies grow heavy. Their mask becomes a burden they can no longer wear comfortably. This is not coincidence. It is the mercy of God being withdrawn from their rebellion. God does not strike immediately, not because he is unable, but because he desires every act to be fully exposed. He allows the narcissist to walk further into their own deception, not to protect them, but to reveal them. He allows the web of manipulation to grow larger, not for their benefit, but so that when it collapses, no one will question who built it. He allows the narcissist's arrogance to reach its peak, because pride carries the seeds of its own destruction, seeds that only sprout when the season is fully ripe. And when it is ripe, God speaks the word that angels fear and demons flee from: enough. When heaven declares this word, the spiritual atmosphere shifts violently. What was tolerated is now confronted. What was hidden is now forced into the light. What was whispered is now shouted from the rooftops. The narcissist experiences this shift not as a lightning bolt, but as a slow unraveling, a divine dismantling of everything they trusted in more than God. Their strategies turn against them. Their narratives contradict each other. Their alliances weaken. Their arrogance isolates them. Their confidence trembles. Their illusions crack. This is the justice of God at work, not theatrical, but absolute. The narcissist is not destroyed by your strength. They are destroyed by their own. God does not need to smite them with fire. He simply removes his restraining hand, and the weight of their own sin crushes them. The breaking point is heaven's response to persistent cruelty. It is the moment when God will no longer allow your soul to be tampered with, your identity distorted, or your peace stolen. It is the moment when he rises, not gently, but as the defender. He has always been fierce, protective, unwavering. When God says enough, the narcissist's reign ends, though they may not realize it immediately. Their power begins to decay from the inside. Their influence rots. Their shadow shrinks. What once felt immovable now trembles under their feet. And you, though you may feel weary, drained, or bruised, are standing at the very edge of a divine reversal that has been forming in silence. The breaking point is not merely their end, it is the beginning of something breathtaking for you. For once God declares, enough, the story shifts into a territory the narcissist cannot survive. The holy reversal, crafted by the hands of the Almighty. The climax, divine reversal. There comes a moment in the story of every anointed life when the direction of the wind changes not gradually, not politely, but with the unmistakable force of heaven reclaiming what was stolen. Divine reversal is not a metaphor, it is a spiritual earthquake. It is the moment God overturns the entire landscape so decisively that even the angels stand still to witness it. For a long time, it seemed the narcissist had the upper hand. Their lies were believed, their charm rewarded, their schemes successful. They walked through life as though the universe revolved around their desires, their ambitions, their self-made illusions. But the danger of living in illusions is that they have no foundation, and when divine truth descends, it does not simply illuminate the lie, it crushes it. Divine reversal begins quietly. A conversation takes a different turn. A door the narcissist once controlled no longer opens for them. Someone who defended them now begins to feel uneasy in their presence. A truth hidden for years begins pressing against the surface, begging for release. What they built through manipulation now begins to tremble, not because of human effort, but because heaven has touched it. And when heaven touches something, it cannot remain the same. Reversal is the moment when God flips the script so violently that the narcissist realizes, too late, they were never the author of your story. They only thought they were. They believed they could shape your destiny with their cruelty, but destiny does not submit to the hands of those who thrive in darkness. It responds only to the one who wrote it before your first breath. In divine reversal, the very tools the narcissist used against you become the materials of their downfall. Their lies expose them. Their pride humiliates them. Their manipulation isolates them. Their arrogance invites judgment. Their schemes collapse under the weight of their own corruption. They tried to close doors for you, not knowing God would build new ones. They tried to silence your voice, not knowing God had already amplified it. They tried to break your spirit, not knowing God uses brokenness as the birthplace of glory. Reversal is not God punishing them for your sake. It is God defending His purpose in you. He will not allow a manipulator, no matter how charming, influential, or confident, to sabotage the destiny He crafted with His own hands. Divine reversal is heaven's announcement that you belong to Him and that the narcissist's influence over your life is officially revoked. When reversal hits, it does not simply shift circumstances, it exposes truth. It clears fog, it restores dignity, it unveils what was hidden, it strengthens what was weakened, it lifts what was trampled. And as the narcissist begins to lose their grip on the narrative they fought so desperately to control, you begin to rise not through vengeance, but through divine intention. Reversal is the holy moment when God Himself steps onto the stage of your story and reorders everything the narcissist disordered. It is the moment when the imbalance is corrected, the injustice confronted, the pain redeemed. You do not rise because the narcissist falls. You rise because God has decided it is time for you to rise. This is the climax of the divine drama. The thunderous turning of the tide, the unveiling of truth, the collapse of deception, and the elevation of the one God has chosen. And as the ground shifts beneath the narcissist's feet, something else begins to unfold. The inevitable collapse of everything they built apart from truth. The collapse, when karma strikes the weakness they tried to hide. Collapse does not begin with noise, it begins with erosion. Long before the narcissist realizes what is happening, the structures they built begin to rot from within. The confidence they wore like armor grows thin. The alliances they depended on grow brittle. The spotlight they believed would always shine on them begins to dim. They sense something slipping, but they cannot name it. They feel something shifting, but they cannot stop it. That is the silent signature of divine justice, the slow unraveling of what was never rooted in truth. A narcissist's life is a tower constructed from borrowed bricks, bricks of praise, admiration, deception, and illusion. They believe the tower is indestructible because it appears tall. But height is not strength, foundations are, and when God examines a foundation built on pride, manipulation, and self-worship, He does not need to send a storm to destroy it. All He has to do is withdraw His mercy, and the tower collapses under its own weight. The fall of a narcissist is rarely sudden, it is patterned. First, the inner world trembles, their thoughts become restless, their sleep fractures. Their confidence becomes a ghost that no longer answers when called. They begin to feel the consequences of choices they thought were too clever to catch up with them. Shame, once buried deep, starts rising like smoke through the cracks. They are haunted not by demons, but by themselves. Then the outer world begins to decay. People pull away from them without knowing why. Opportunities dry up, doors close, resources shrink. Their voice loses influence. Their image becomes harder to maintain. Their relationships fracture under the weight of their own self-interest. The collapse is not cruelty. It is clarity. It is heaven returning to them what they have sown. For years they sowed deception, now truth confronts them. They sowed manipulation, now freedom escapes their grasp. They sowed pride, now humiliation stands at the door. They sowed destruction, now the ruins are their own. A narcissist depends entirely on an external world they can control. But collapse begins when that world no longer bends to their will. Their strategies stop working not because they changed, but because God shifted the atmosphere around them. What once responded to manipulation now rejects it. What once tolerated them now resists them. What once admired them now questions them. The entire ecosystem of their power begins to suffocate. And here is the most profound truth. Collapse is not God striking them from above. It is God removing His restraint and letting their own choices return to them. He does not need to curse what they have built. He only needs to stop blessing it. Once His hand lifts, everything they depended on to uphold their identity begins to fall apart. The persona they worked so hard to maintain becomes too heavy to carry. The lies they told require more lies to sustain. The relationships they exploited demand truth they cannot give. The arrogance they once celebrated becomes a cage that tightens around them. Eventually, the narcissist faces the one enemy they cannot escape: themselves. Their collapse is not about God embarrassing them. It is about God freeing you. The atmosphere that held you captive is now the atmosphere that holds them accountable. The very games they played now entrap them. The very pride that elevated them now isolates them. The very image they worship now becomes their downfall. And as their world becomes a maze they cannot navigate, yours begins to open. Because collapse is not just the undoing of the wicked, it is the clearing of the stage for what God intends to build next. The narcissist's fall is not the conclusion of your story. It is the prelude to your restoration. It is the removal of what opposed your purpose, so your purpose can finally rise without resistance. For as surely as collapse comes to the one who built on sand, elevation comes to the one who built on God. Your elevation, when God lifts what the enemy tried to bury. Elevation does not announce itself with trumpets. It arrives the way dawn does, quietly at first. Then suddenly, the entire horizon floods with light. The narcissist believed that your story ended at the place where they wounded you, but God never writes endings in the language of your enemies. He writes them in the language of resurrection. Before elevation comes recognition, God, recognizing the weight of what you endured, the faithfulness you carried through seasons of confusion, the integrity you protected while being misunderstood. Heaven keeps a record of every tear, every prayer whispered in exhaustion, every moment you chose righteousness over retaliation. And when the appointed time arrives, God turns those unseen sacrifices into the foundation of your rise. Elevation is not God rewarding you for surviving the narcissist. It is God fulfilling what He planned for you long before the narcissist entered your life. They were a detour, not a destination. A disruption, not a definition. A shadow that could not extinguish your light, only reveal it more clearly once God shifted the atmosphere. Your rise begins internally. Strength returns in places where fear once lived. Clarity blossoms where confusion once grew. The heaviness that sat on your chest begins to lift. You wake one day and realize you are no longer asking, "Why did this happen to me?" Instead, you find yourself whispering, "Lord, lead me forward." That shift in posture is the first sign that heaven has already begun to elevate you. Then, the external world begins to reflect the internal transformation. Paths that were blocked open with surprising ease. Relationships that drained you fall away naturally. Opportunities you thought were lost return with new purpose. People who overlooked you now see you with clarity. Doors that once rejected you now swing open as if waiting for your arrival. Elevation is not merely God placing you somewhere new, it is God restoring your identity. The parts of you the narcissist tried to bury, your joy, your discernment, your gentleness, your voice begin to rise again, untouched by their attempts to deform them. God does not return you to who you were before the pain. He brings forth a version of you forged in fire, but shining like gold. And here is the holy mystery. God often elevates His people in the very areas where the enemy tried to break them. If the narcissist tried to silence you, God gives you influence. If they tried to diminish you, God expands your territory. If they tried to isolate you, God surrounds you with divine connections. If they tried to make you doubt your worth, God crowns you with purpose. Your elevation is not a response to their downfall. It is an expression of God's sovereignty over your destiny. He lifts you because the time has come for you to carry what He placed in your spirit. The lion that roared against your soul is now a distant echo behind you, while the shepherd's voice leads you into wide-open spaces. As you rise, something remarkable happens. The narcissist's collapse no longer defines your story. It becomes a footnote, not a headline. A closed chapter, not your identity. A shadow behind you, not a threat before you. God elevates you so thoroughly that even you begin to see that what the narcissist meant for harm, God has reshaped into preparation. You are wiser, steadier, more discerning, more grounded in truth. Your scars are no longer wounds, they are testimonies written into your spiritual bloodstream. And as God lifts you higher, the spiritual landscape around you changes. What was once a battlefield becomes fertile ground. What once felt like loss now feels like positioning. What once felt like death now feels like birth. Elevation is the moment when God confirms what heaven always knew. You were chosen, you were protected, and your purpose survived every attack. And this elevation prepares you for the final revelation, the declaration that seals your story with divine authority, the verdict that heaven has spoken. There is a moment in every divine story when God steps forward, not as a whisper, not as a comforter, but as a king issuing a verdict. That is the moment you are now standing in. Everything you walked through, everything you endured, everything you survived under the weight of a narcissist's cruelty has led to this, the public revelation of God's protection over your life. The narcissists believed they had the final word. They believed their narrative would define you, their betrayal would destroy you, and their manipulation would swallow your identity whole. But the final word never rests with the one who wounds it, rests with the one who heals. It rests with the one who formed you, called you, marked you, and watched over you long before the narcissist even stepped into your story. Heaven has rendered its judgment, and the ruling is irrevocable. You belong to God, you always have. And no power, no cruelty, no deception has been strong enough to separate you from His hand. This is not merely vindication, this is revelation. The revelation that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob has been defending you in ways you never saw. You thought you were fighting alone, yet angels were guarding you. You thought you were drowning, yet the hand that parted the Red Sea was beneath you. You thought your soul was collapsing, yet God was reinforcing you from the inside with a strength the narcissist could never understand. And now, as this chapter closes, something holy happens. God redefines the meaning of what you endured. What felt like abandonment becomes evidence of preservation. What felt like loss becomes preparation for elevation. What felt like the end becomes the doorway to a future crafted by God Himself. Your identity is no longer entangled with the narcissist's actions. Your worth is no longer questioned by their lies. Your future is no longer limited by the devastation they caused. You are not walking away damaged, you are walking away redesigned. The fire they meant to consume you has refined you. The betrayal they meant to break you has awakened a depth of faith they never imagined you would carry. The pain they inflicted has carved out space for a greater capacity of wisdom, compassion, and discernment. The narcissist, meanwhile, stands outside this sacred moment, unable to cross the threshold into the restoration God is unfolding for you. Their chapter is sealed, their influence is dissolved, their claims over your life have been revoked by the highest authority in existence. For heaven itself has spoken, "Touch not my anointed." This is not only protection, it is proclamation. A declaration that you are stepping into a life no longer defined by survival but by purpose. You are walking toward a horizon built by God, not shaped by trauma. You are rising into a story where peace is no longer the exception but the inheritance. And as you move forward, remember this truth that will follow you all your days. No narcissist survives the consequences of harming someone whom God has claimed as his own. They fall by their own hand, by their own choices, by the very destruction they intended for you. But you rise by God's hand. Your past is redeemed. Your identity is restored. Your future is protected. And heaven walks with you into everything the enemy tried to steal. The battle is over. God has spoken. And the Anointed One, you walks away undefeated.